even with the best medicine, with the best emergency services in the world that have maybe ever existed in human history, you don't get too far into adulthood without running into an emergency situation where it's you could be the difference between someone living or being permanently having some kind of permanent medical condition or dying. Okay, our guest is Erin Pettengill from Personal Protection Academy, and she's going to talk about emergency first aid. This segment is sponsored by Cargo, cases and rugged gear outfitters in El Cajon. Go to cargostores.com. They have all kinds of cool products. Or go down and visit them at 423 Broadway in El Cajon. If you need to protect your gear while you're out on the go, look no further. Cargo has the perfect case for you. So if you need it protected and you want it customized, go see Cargo. Cargo's the place to go. Use code GOR to get 10% off on their website, or if you mention Gun Owners Radio or San Diego County Gun Owners at their store, they'll give you 10% off. Michael Dunn at Cargo is fantastic. Their whole crew is wonderful, and they'll take good care of you. If you're a manufacturer, they also do customized branded cases for businesses too, so check them out. Great products, great prices, and uncommonly good service. Cases and rugged gear outfitters. That's Cargo. Thank you so much for sponsoring the segment and being so supportive. Okay, Erin from Personal Protection Academy, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
So tell people your background. What's your background? What's your area of expertise?
Sure. Well, I've been a nurse for 30 years. Actually, as of June, I'll be 30 years as a nurse, and started out doing pediatrics, oncology, and did that for a while. And then I'm sure Mike shared with you, we lived overseas for 10 years. So we lived in Central America for 8 years, did a lot of public health. I have my master's degree in public health, water purification, and just everything that you can imagine that comes with living in a third world country. And then we decided to take that adventure to Western Africa. And I did a lot of the similar things in Western Africa and lived there for 2 years. And in the meantime, I also am a disaster response trained. So I am dating myself a little bit, but responded to the tsunami, the Boxing Day tsunami. I want to say that was 2004. Anyways, I was in Sri Lanka for 3 weeks, helping out with all the injuries, as you can imagine, from something like that. And then went to Haiti for 3 weeks. Well, right after the earthquake. We were there 3 days after the earthquake. Still bodies on the ground, that kind of thing. Spent 3 weeks there. Spent 9 years in the Army, completely not medically related. I was in a Patriot missile system and shot down airplanes during the Cold War, all that fun stuff.
Wow.
And yeah, so, and let's see, what else have I got? After we came back from living overseas, I oversee 20 dialysis clinics for their medical aspects, do education and training and auditing and all the things. And I'm also certified with TECC, which I'm sure a lot of your folks know what that is, but those who don't, that's TCCC, which is Tactical Casualty Combat Care. This is the civilian version of that. So it's Tactical Emergency Casualty Care, and I'm certified in that. And so it's just, this is a passion for me, and it's something that everybody needs to know how to do. And the nice thing about this kind of emergency preparedness is it used to be, first responders and paramedics and cops would be the ones that showed up with a tourniquet, and they realized we need to teach everybody how to do this. I can't imagine there was nearly sufficient amount of tourniquets from after the Boston Marathon bombing, for example. Yeah. There's been plenty of unfortunate incidences where tourniquets have been needed and either people didn't know how to use them or they just weren't available. So I'm trying to do everything I can to get as many people to know how to do it, to know CPR, to know all the things. So, it's one of those skills that you need to know how to do. And I'd rather have you have the skills and not ever need it than need to have the skills and not know what you're doing. is the bottom
Yeah,
line. So,
I get it. That's amazing. I had no idea. I knew you lived overseas, but I didn't know you lived so many places. Where did you
yeah.
grow up, by the way?
Bay Area, San Jose.
So coming out of San Jose and going to places like Africa and Haiti, traveling internationally, not just traveling. I mean, it's not like you were on a cruise ship and got off at a port
Yeah.
and bought some trinkets, and I mean you were living there and working. What was it like going to some of these other places in the world that I'm sure were nothing like San Jose?
Yeah, nothing like San Jose. I'm a city girl. Mike's from Yuba City and the country, and the first time I touched a cow was when I went to the state fair. He's like, "Oh my gosh, we got to break you in, man." But I've always had an adventurous heart. I've always had, I don't want to live stationary in life and always on the go. And being in the military, and I mean, I was stationed in Germany, so I mean that's first world and what have you. But we would go live in the woods for 2 weeks at a time, and almost every month we were out in the woods for 2 weeks at a time. So I've always had an adventurous heart. And I did prepare myself. I did a whole bunch of training outside of my official training, just to mentally and physically and emotionally prepare myself for that. But it is another thing when you get there and you actually realize this will be your life for the next foreseeable future. And and it's hard. It's not just living the life in a third world country where you don't have potable water, where you have to purify your own water, where you don't have electricity more often than you do have electricity, and figuring out how to live in that. But things that you don't think of in a first world country, like malaria prevention, and what do you do for that, and just all the things. And I basically was our family doctor for the entire time that we lived out of seas, because we just didn't have the resources that I have here. I can pick up a phone and call for a paramedic.
So what did
So
you learn about the United States living outside of the United States?
well, I do know that our medical system is kind of broken, but it's also the best in the world. I mean, I can say that without question. Just knowing that the simple things that people die from are so preventable in
Jeez.
the United States, and the reality of what we have available to us can't and shouldn't be overlooked. I mean,
I would imagine, especially emergency medicine.
oh,
I
without
can't.
question.
Yeah, I mean, we're not just talking about like going to your doctor and getting a checkup, or we're not just talking about surgery. I mean, emergency medicine in the United States, I would imagine, even compared to other first world countries, is bar none the best.
I mean, the reality is in the village we worked at in Honduras, a guy had a heart attack basically in front of me, and I worked on him for about 45 minutes, CPR and all the things. And knowing that the village that we worked in was about 30 minutes outside of the city, and it was gang infested. And so the cops don't go out there. There is no ambulance kind of system. I knew it was me or nothing.
Wow.
And unfortunately, it was not a good outcome. But the other example was a guy right in front of our house where we lived. He was on his scooter and got hit by a car and fractured his leg, his femur, which is the upper leg. And the paramedics showed up, but basically paramedics are just transportation, and they just picked him up and threw him on his stretcher while his leg is flailing around and he's screaming and yelling. And I don't know the end result of that, but the majority of those people they get amputations as opposed to surgery, because there's just not the kind of surgery that's needed. So,
But even with the best medicine, with the best emergency services in the world that have maybe ever existed in human history, there's still. We were talking about Dakota. We were talking about it last week or a week prior about. It's hard to get through life. You don't get too far into adulthood without running into an emergency situation where it's you could be the difference between someone living or being permanently having some kind of permanent medical condition, or dying. I mean, it really truly is important that you know this stuff. And I think that the worst feeling in the world is being in an emergency situation and feeling helpless, not knowing what to do, not being the one that can, help somebody, whatever's going on, whether they're choking or having a heart attack or they broke a limb, whatever it is, but just sitting there helpless is just a horrible, horrible feeling. So in your quest to help people become more effective and better at emergency medicine, what do you do? What kind of classes do you teach, or what does that look like?
So I have what I kind of call a tactical first aid class. What is involved in that is I get everyone certified with Red Cross for adult CPR and using an AED, which is an automatic external defibrillator. Because the reality is CPR, the way I like to look at it is CPR doesn't necessarily save lives. It creates time. It creates time for an AED to arrive or some higher level of care to arrive to get you to where you need to be. So not enough people on this planet know CPR, without question. People are dying that shouldn't be dying when someone next to them should have known how to do it. So
Wow.
That's part of that class. The other portion of that class is basically Stop the Bleed, which is a nationally recognized bleeding control program. And that includes tourniquet use, chest seals, packing, all of that kind of stuff. And again, I mean, you can bleed out from a hemorrhagic bleed in 2 to 4 minutes. I mean, as good as our EMS system is in the United States, 2 minutes is not sufficient time. And in the meantime, you've bled out.
It's a lot to ask for an ambulance to show up within 2 minutes or even within 4 minutes is a lot to ask.
Even just for a 911 call to get made and the location to be given to dispatch, 2 minutes is a lot to ask.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a lot to ask. The national response time is about 7 minutes, which, I mean, if you think about it in the grand scheme of things, is really fast, but it's too late. You know, I had a guy who came to my class, and I always like to ask all my students who come to my class, I'm like, what's your why? Why are you here? And he said, and this was probably about 6 months ago, he came to my class, and he said, I was at an indoor range, and the wife accidentally shot her husband. And he said, I literally stood back with my hands up, and he's like, I have no idea what to do. I mean, in an indoor range, you know, you've got people around, you've got, you know, RSOs, you've got the people who've got hopefully the training that they need. But he's like, that made me realize, you know, I carry this little first aid kit around with me. I don't even know how to use it. And he's like, I am here 2 weeks after this event, and I'm still a little bit traumatized about it, but I realized I've got to fix this. And so you know, in our concealed carry classes, we say the same thing. I'm like, all right, you guys, y'all came here, you assumed we had an IFAC, an individual first aid kit.
Yeah.
I said, but how many of you have one or have one in your car? And typically the response is maybe 1, maybe 2 people have it, but it's in their car. And I said, okay, well, do you know how to use the supplies that you have? I mean, do you even know how to use a tourniquet? Do you know if you have chest seals in there? Do you know if they're vented or non-vented? And if you don't even know what that even means or what my question is, you definitely don't know what you have in your first aid kit. So
I'll be honest with you. I should probably take your class. Chest seals, that's intimidating to me. That's an intimidating thing. Tourniquets, and you know what? And the sponges, what are they called? The hemostatic. Not intimidating. You know, all that other stuff, direct pressure, indirect, none of that. But chest seals, for that takes to a whole other level for me. You know,
if you get a through and through in the chest, I mean, even just not a through and through, but you get something to the chest. You know, you can end up with a tension pneumothorax, which is way more technical information than you need to know, but that can kill you. I mean, obviously. So it compresses your lung, which compresses your heart, which makes you stop breathing. And anyway, so you got to get that on board too. I mean, you need to know how to use that too.
And none of this, there really isn't anybody out there that should be worried that they don't have the ability to learn or do these things. This is all, anybody can do this stuff.
Anybody. And I'll tell you what, Everyone gets a little practice tourniquet, because that's another misconception, is you jump on a certain website and you type in cat tourniquet and you'll get a $7.49 tourniquet. And people think they're doing the right thing and they buy them, and you should never say your life is dependent on a $7.49 tourniquet. You better be spending at least $30 on a real tournament, because those are
really?
fake.
Yes. Because they'll break, right? The cheap ones will
They'll break. They'll break. Yeah.
You know
High.
you know how absolutely mad I would be if I were putting a tourniquet on somebody to save their life and it broke because it's some cheap Chinese copy? I would be.
And that's exactly what they are. High fail rate on those tourniquets. So, I mean, I teach in my class, like the first thing I do is teach them how to use it. And then I'm like, okay, you guys, throughout this class, I'm going to give you a limb and you have 2 minutes to put on your tourniquet from start to end. And so we'll just be going along and I'm showing some slide decks and talking about this. And then I'll say, right lower leg, go. And then I start the timer and I'm screaming and yelling at people because I'm trying to raise the adrenaline in the room, because that's what it's going to be, right? And then I'll go around and check to see how well they did or didn't do. And I do that throughout the class because, you know, that's the reality is it's going to be a stressful situation. And then at the end, I have a little active shooter scenario and it's total chaos and I absolutely love it. And then we debrief at the end and I'm like, Erin, that was terrible. That was so chaotic. I'm like, that's the point, because a mass shooter is not going to come in and advertise, oh, I'm here, get ready. And hopefully you have the supplies on you that you need. So I love doing that part of the class.
Yeah, there's no calling timeout, in a real situation.
No. So
what are some pointers you have if folks out there, other than take a class? What are some misconceptions or myths or something that people tend to believe but that's wrong, or something that people don't know that they should?
It's really funny is because actually right before I teach how to actually use a tourniquet, I go over the 6 misconceptions or the myths about tourniquet use.
Oh, wow. All right. Give us one. What's a good one?
Okay. One is that you're going to lose your limb.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a trick question. And I realize that the reality is there's only one tourniquet. Well, let me back up. There's 5 major types of tourniquets in use out on the market. And so I say that because if you have an IFAC that has a certain type of tourniquet and somebody hands you another tourniquet that's different, how you use that tourniquet is different. So like the soft T and the cat T, for example, 2 different types of tourniquets. There's a rat T, there's a ratchet tourniquet, there's a SWAT T, and those are all out there and in people's IFACs. And if you don't know how to use one tourniquet, you need to know how to use all the primary types of tourniquets, or they'll hand you something, you'll be like, I don't even know what to do with this. So that's a thing. But so the
by the way, I remember that in the late 80s when I learned how to do first aid, that was what was taught about tourniquets, is the only use a tourniquet if you know they're going to lose a limb, because if you put a tourniquet on, they will definitely lose the limb. And I 10 years later, late 90s, certainly by the Afghanistan war, by that time, it was all that had totally changed, and that no, that's just simply not true. That a tourniquet can save a life and without costing a limb.
So the magic number is 2 hours. So once you put a tourniquet on, you keep it on. You leave it on until you get to higher level of care is the bottom line. And of all of those tourniquets that are out there, the cat tourniquet really is the only one that it even has a place to put the time on the tourniquet. All the other ones don't have it. And the reality is because if it's on your limb for 2 hours or less, then the likelihood of you having any kind of permanent damage, like whether the muscle starts to die or nerve damage or anything like that, is so insignificantly small. It's once you hit over that 2 hour mark where you may start to have some potential death of tissue or some nerve damage. The ultimate time is 6 hours. If your tourniquet's on for 6 hours, you're probably going to lose a limb. But you know what I teach in my class? And it's the same way I teach in my CPR class. Okay, so they lose a limb, which really sucks, but they're going to be alive tomorrow to complain about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. Sure.
Yeah. So same with CPR. I'm like, well, what about this? What if I break their ribs? I'm like, well, you probably will, but I don't care because they're going to be alive tomorrow to complain about their broken ribs. So you can't be dead or be dead. Yeah.
I remember it's kind of funny. I remember, I don't know, 10 plus years ago, I put together, all these products started becoming mainstream, like the Quick Clot, and the really nice tourniquets and whatnot. So I put together this kick-ass, first aid kit. And I was, I'd carry it in my range bag, right? And then I was at I think it was a tactical shotgun match, and somebody next to me needed a Band-Aid. That's all they needed. They just needed a Band-Aid. And guess what I didn't have in my kick-ass first aid kit, So don't forget the basics, too.
Oh, yeah. I call that my boo-boo kit. I have my boo-boo kit, which is separate and aside, and then I have my IFAC. So I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So how often do you have your classes?
About every 6 weeks.
Okay.
Sometimes I'll do a just to stop the bleed class. And that we'll do in the evenings because it leaves it available for people who are working or whatever to come to that. But my tactical first aid classes, I do about every 6 weeks.
Okay.
So,
cool. And you can bring like teenage kids and up, right? I mean, as far as age limit. Yeah. I mean,
100%.
yeah. So,
Yep.
All right, cool. Where are you guys located?
We are in Marietta. We have an office off of Cal Oaks where we do all of our in-class portion of our trainings. So like for these tactical first aid classes, that's what we do. And the other thing that I do that, well, we both do is if there's a class that you really want that doesn't work with the timeline or the time frame that we have it on, as long as you got 3 or more people, we'll go to you. I just went down to San Diego about 2 weeks ago. And there was a company that came and asked me to do basically my tactical first aid class. So I went down to them, took all the things, all the supplies, all the mannequins for their certification for CPR and all the stop the bleed stuff and went down to them. So we definitely do that because like I said, my passion is to get it out there however I can, whatever that means.
That's phenomenal. Erin, that's very, very cool. Personal Protection Academy, what's your website?
We are info@theppa.com.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you, Erin. Thank you so much for everything that you do. Fascinating life that you've led. I got to tell you, you've been all over the place. Honduras,
Sure have.
Haiti, and you've blessed the rains down in Africa, I guess. So
Sure enough.
Awesome job on everything you've done. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate
All
it.
right.
Everybody,
Thanks,
check
you
them out.
guys. Thanks for all you do, man.
Yes, ma'am. Personal Protection Academy in Marietta. Mike and Erin Pettengill, you guys are the best. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks.
Hey, thanks for watching Gun Owners Radio. I hope you loved that clip. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and follow us on social media. And check out our website at gunownersradio.com.